When I learned how to be bored by bad behavior, it literally became a superpower. And I'm going to tell you how to do it. I'm still not perfect at it, but it all comes down to one thing, which is nervous system regulation. So we're going to walk through how you can react to people, how you can get control of yourself, and why you would want to do this in the first place. Hi, lady. Lady's just looking for a place to rest. But this has literally changed my life. So if you're someone where you feel like people are either walking all over you, or you're being over accommodating, or people are mistreating you, this nervous system regulation and being able to be bored or unbothered by people who don't have your best interests at heart, or just, they're used to behaving a certain way because they want a certain outcome, this is going to help you take those tools away from them, whether they're someone that you love or someone that you think is just freaking annoying at work. And it's going to really allow you to detach, right? It's going to allow you to focus on yourself, your goals, your dreams, and not try to control everything around you. So I wanted to talk first about how to regulate your own nervous system, because if you can't do this is just not going to work for you. Because when we talk about like, oh, you should do this with someone, you should do that with someone, it's like, why? Because really you're doing it for you. If you can regulate your own nervous system, if you can take deep breaths, if you can not be needy in this world, like needing people to like you or approve of you, that's going to help you be bored of bad behavior a lot easier. Because when you feel the anxiety, when you feel the fear, when you feel the panic of making someone uncomfortable, which I'm talking to an old version of me, you are going to be able to take some deep breaths and realize that it is not your job. It is not your job to control everyone's emotions, to make sure that everyone is okay. You have to make sure that you're okay. And once you start to make sure that you're okay, you're going to notice your self-respect goes way up. This was the craziest experience for me. Like, as soon as I did it the first few times, I was like, oh my God, I can say no to things. But the way that I did this is, at first it was really hard because I'm someone who I get pretty anxious. Like, I want people to like me. I want to do a good job. But I would literally, instead of doing what I wanted to do, I would take the action that I wanted to take, and literally I would just replace it with something that was easy. So an example is if someone texted me and it was rude and I shouldn't respond to that person, where in the past I would be like over chasing, over reassuring. What I would do is I would literally just watch videos and videos and videos ruminating on the topic, which doesn't sound healthy, but eventually it got to the point where it's like, I knew what happened if I didn't respond to that behavior, which is when you don't respond to behavior, it actually gets better. That was my TV for a sec. But when I didn't respond to bad behavior, it got better. Like, it stopped happening. And so that allowed my nervous system to calm, where now when I feel those feelings of anxiety, I'm like, oh, now I have memories of what happened before. I know there's going to be a better outcome. And so now I'm able to implement things like just praying, deep breaths, walking. But at first, the goal was literally just anything else. And my nervous system didn't calm right away. I had to literally just calm myself down enough and stay centered enough to stick to the action plan that I had and watch what happened, in order to be able to then learn that that was a safe thing to do, and that it actually made me feel better, and it actually increased my self-respect. And so I want to touch on the topic as well of faith versus fear. I watched this thing from Tony Robbins the other day, and I was like, wow, this is so good. I'm definitely going to use this in this video. But faith versus fear is like, a lot of the reason that I was giving into people and wanting them to like me is because naturally we're like hardwired to be afraid of what happens when people don't like us, or if we don't do things. And so I heard this thing from Tony Robbins yesterday where it talked about like, faith is imagination directed and fear is imagination undirected. Where like, if you have faith in something, it's because you know the goal, you know where you're going, and you know that all this is just noise, and the better the bad things leave your life, I mean, the sooner the bad things leave your life, the better. Whereas fear, when I felt fear, it's because I didn't know where I was going. Which is like, I think when people talk about manifestation and it working for them, that's really what they're doing. They've decided the direction that they're going to go. And I know they talk about attracting certain things, but I think you still have to like be going in that direction. But I think just knowing where you're going, from my experience, just allows everything else to bounce off you, because you're like, that's not for me, that's not aligned. It's the most freeing feeling if you haven't experienced it. I implement this stuff within like romantic relationships and business. I really think that it works for pretty much anyone that you're dealing with in your day-to-day life. And so now I want to go into something called operant conditioning, which is a little bit more psychology based. Before I did marketing, which is what I do now, like working for myself, I was a behavioral design consultant, which is basically applied behavioral economics into marketing and healthcare change. And so I love human psychology, I love human behavior. And when I found out about operant conditioning, it really made me realize why acting bored and not reacting works so well. And on the flip side, I'm also going to tell you how you can encourage positive behavior. So when we look at operant conditioning, when we don't react, this actually does something called, I had to look at my notes, negative punishment. So we're removing something to decrease behavior, where a lot of times I think that we think that, oh, if we're nagging someone, oh, if we're complaining, that's going to stop the behavior. What it actually does to men in particular, a lot of men, is they see attention, good, I'm not going to lose this person. Whereas women, we actually are a lot more sensitive to criticism. So it depends on the person what's going to work for them. But in romantic relationships and with men in particular, I found that not reacting does really well, makes them feel ignored. And therefore, it's like, if you don't give them attention, then the behavior just stops. It's not only men, right? I think it will work with women too. Women hate to be ignored, but really it's super, super effective with men if you are the person making the mistake of nagging men and complaining to men, because they're singular focused, right? So they're really only focused on the one task. And so if they're doing something, the best thing to do is to like not react if it's bad. Now, you still want to be in touch with your feelings. Obviously, I am still in touch with my feelings. So if like something hurts me, then I'll just like enact consequences for that. But overall, like not reacting or enforcing a boundary without really having to say anything, I found is the best thing for getting bad behavior to stop or getting it to go away over time. Another example where you'll see this is like, if you're at work, you've got that one colleague who's always complaining about how much work they have. So you're like, what can I take off your plate? Which really the reason that they're complaining is because they want the result of getting things taken off their plate. And so if you're a boss, especially, I know it's like if it is your boss trying to complain and give you stuff, there's nothing you can really do. But if it's your boss or your equal, if you're the boss or they're your equal and they're complaining about work, you could just like not do anything despite their emotion. A lot of times it will stop. If you want someone to be doing something that's really good, you have to remember that if it's something that you're complaining about and then they actually do it, you could be over the top and happy that they did it and praise them and give them positive reinforcement as well. This doesn't have to just apply in a negative way. I know a lot of times we want to get people to stop doing things and start doing things, and you can use this for either thing. I don't really consider this manipulation because you are praising someone where they should be praised and you are taking away attention and you're maintaining your self-respect. So that's a little bit about operant conditioning and why being bored works so well. So we've talked about, nervous system regulation, detachment, and operant conditioning. And now I want to talk about how you can actually track what you're doing, because a lot of people, I feel like they're so in touch with, they're like what they're doing in the patterns, or they're like, I hate this, but then they don't actually know how to stop. And I really think that when you're able to break these things down into a set of behaviors, it makes it a lot more manageable. Like I literally had a spreadsheet to get me out of these behaviors where I would put it into Excel and I would be like, okay, I'm only going to do this activity X amount of times per week. I'm going to do this activity X amount of times per week and this activity X amount of times per week. So for example, in the colleague example where your colleague is complaining about work, you were previously like, let's say you would take on 3 tasks a week, you can reduce that by being like, I'm only going to take on one person's task per week, right? That's one example of it. And then you just track every week to see if you're actually on board with that. And you do that for 12 weeks. 12 weeks is what I recommend. I have it in another video. It's how I made my first 100K in sales. Really, really useful to just be tracking your metrics. But you got to think about you and like what you want and how you can decrease bad behavior and like the things that you're doing that aren't helping either people that you love or people that are annoying or whatever it is. But you got to think about what's enabling this behavior that is hurting me. Because if you're able to like protect yourself, protect your energy, protect your life force, this could be so good for you. And if you can learn to be bored by things that, are disrespectful to you at the end of the day, or at least like unhelpful, to society as a whole, I think that you're adding great value to society. Not that you have to care what I think. You got to care about what you think. That's the whole point of the video. But see how these tips go for you, and let me know if you have any questions in the comments. See you next week.